Alright, my lovers, today we need to talk about transfers. I'll be honest with you, bit of a slow news week in the old bank holiday weekend build-up, isn't it? But I could have spoken about Erik Ten Hag. Lots of people wanted me to chat about Man United. Zach literally did a We Need to Talk on Ten Hag last week. We put a transfer talk out on Ten Hag this week. If you want to watch either of them, please be my guest. So today we're going to be talking about one player that must leave each Premier League club this upcoming summer. Now, it could be for a variety of different reasons. Maybe the player needs to go. Maybe the club have just got to get rid to get the cash. Maybe he's a bad influence on the squad. There's lots of different reasons, and I'm going to explain all of them. Alright then, I've got the magical graphic up in front of me here, and we're going to be starting with Arsenal. And I'm not going to be including free transfers within this. You know, players that are leaving anyway, i.e. Lacazette and Nketiah. You know, at Man United might be Paul Pogba, Jesse Lingard. I'm not including free transfers. This is going to be players that will still be under contract at the end of the summer. And I think Nicolas Pepe's got to go. 72 million quid Arsenal burnt on Nicolas Pepe, and he turns 27 in May. He scored just 27 goals, hasn't he, in over 100 appearances now. I still don't think he's reached the figure he scored at Lille. I think he's like 10 goals behind it, and he's already played something like 40 more games. He also hasn't started a Premier League game since the 18th of October. I just don't think Arteta fancies him, especially in this slightly more intense setup that he's got going. He's certainly way behind Bukayo Saka in the pecking order. I think it's time to ship him back to France. Aston Villa then, I've gone for Anwar El Ghazi. That loan to Everton has been the definition of a clusterfuck. He's also out of contract in 2023, so this is the last summer they're going to be able to get any sort of fee for him. He's obviously way down the pecking order, hence him being sent out on loan to lowly Everton. He actually scored 10 Premier League goals last season, and a few important ones too, but I just think now, where Everton are trying to get to, even though they're not playing particularly well at the moment, El Ghazi doesn't fit, so he's got to go. At Brentford, I could easily have said Ivan Toney, because I think he's been pretty decent this season in terms of instant Premier League impact. Lots of goals, particularly since Eriksen's arrived. And, you know, off the field, some of the social media stuff that's come out doesn't seem to suggest to me he's got a long-term future at Brentford. But I'm not going to say Toney, I'm going to say Jensen. I asked a few Brentford fans about Jensen, and the general consensus was a little bit Harry Winks of the Brentford side. Doesn't really contribute enough going forward or backwards. Very neat on the ball, and they were actually pretty surprised that he's got as many minutes as he has this season since the arrival of Frank Onyeka. And I think if Christian Eriksen does sign a new deal, might be unlikely, then I'm not sure where Matthias Jensen fits into this side. They've also got Josh Da Silva to come back as well. I totally forgot about that. So I think if they could get, you know, £5 to £8 million for him, it might be a smart little sale. At Brighton, obvious one, Yves Bissouma. It's got to be done this summer, I'm afraid. He's out of contract in 2023. There's going to be a host of European level sides sniffing around his signature. I think he's still only 25. He's putting up nearly 6 tackles and interceptions a game. He's an absolute beast in the midfield, isn't he? And Brighton do have a little bit of a problem when it comes to selling. They've only once got over £13 million for a player, and that was, of course, Ben White. Now, I think Bissouma will command a considerable fee, but maybe not as big as some people are talking about. We've heard Yuri Tielemans being linked with exits at about £25 million. If they get anything around the £30 million mark for Bissouma, I think they've done pretty well, and I think they will. Let's go to Burnley then, and it's a bit of a difficult one with the clubs that are going down, because you've kind of got to think, okay, which of their players do they sell to get the most money, or is it that they're just not going to be able to keep hold of them? And I think that's going to be the case with Maxwell Cornet, who I think is going to leave. He's still only 25. I think he scored 7 goals this season, which is the most of any player in that Burnley squad. He's really versatile as well. He's proved that he can play as a forward in the Premier League, but he also operated under Rudy Garcia as a left-back, as a left wing-back. Anywhere along that left-hand side of the pitch, he's going to offer options, and there's going to be plenty of Premier League clubs that are interested in Maxwell Cornet at a cut price if Burnley go down. And I think they will go down, and I think he will get sold. At Chelsea, it's a difficult one, but I feel like it's got to be done. It's Romelu Lukaku. I mean, this move has just been an absolute disaster for all parties involved. other than Inter Milan. He's clearly now behind Havertz, and you might argue Timo Werner in the pecking order. They also have Broha to return in the summer, who's had an exceptional season on loan at Southampton. Look, we all know he scored goals for fun at Inter Milan, but this season I think it's 12 goals in all competitions, just 5 in the Premier League. Nowhere near good enough for a £98 million outlay. In fact, if you work it out roughly, it boils down to about £8 million per Lukaku goal this season, which is just carnage, isn't it? It's absolute carnage. I mean, since the beginning of March, Lukaku started 7 games, and I think he's had just over 80 touches in those 7 games. And if you average it down, averages to like 12 touches a match, or 12 touches per 90. What's gone on there? I feel for the sake of Lukaku's career, it's actually best for him to cut now. If he can get a move to PSG, get the move to PSG, because he will score bucket loads of goals in the French league. But overall, oh dear, it's just not worked. My predictions of him being top scorer and Chelsea winning the league. We can fly through Crystal Palace's then. I think this one's fairly fair. It's Milivojevic, obviously club captain, but I think he's very much a Roy Hodgson player. I think he is slightly unsuited to this Patrick Vieira high-intensity style of playing. He's obviously crucial to the way the team is set up off the pitch. He's apparently extremely influential, but I think now is probably the time for Crystal Palace. If they can get a fee for him, fantastic, because he's been a great servant for the club. Moving on to Everton, and this one I think is a little bit controversial to say they must sell him, but I've put down Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I've gone for Dominic Calvert-Lewin mainly because of the financial peril Everton face, and they are going to have to sell someone this summer. They absolutely are going to have to sell someone this summer, be that Dominic Calvert-Lewin or Richarlison, who are their only 2 really sellable assets, if I'm not including the likes of Anthony Gordon in there as well. And Dominic Calvert-Lewin has had an injury-riddled season. He's missed more games this season than he has done across the entirety of the rest of his career. He also turned 25 in March, so I think it's time for Calvert-Lewin to take that next step in his career. I do believe he could be playing at the European level, and at the moment Everton are nowhere near that. So I think for the sake of Calvert-Lewin's career, for Everton's financial problems, Dominic Calvert-Lewin leaving might have to happen. Let's talk about Leeds then, and I didn't want to have to do it. I've gone for Rafinha, and I feel like this is maybe a little bit bait because they obviously don't have to sell Rafinha unless they go down. I think that relegation clause kicks in. But I just have an inkling that £75 million, that sort of muted figure, if somebody pays that, Leeds have to accept it. That is a big old fee. Because he is absolutely sensational, isn't he? I think it's 10 goals in the league this season, already bettering last season's output. He's extremely progressive with his passing and his ball carrying. He's a really tenacious worker off the ball. You know, I think he's the 9th most progressive passer in the entire Premier League, which is crazy given how high at the pitch he plays, how influential he is for Leeds. It cannot be understated. So I think maybe to say must sell doesn't quite fit the billing, but I just think they will sell him. So I've put him in. At Leicester, we can fly through this one. I think it's obviously Youri Tielemans. He's out of contract in 2023. He's not going to be signing a new one, so you need to get a fee for a player like Youri Tielemans. Obviously, that's going to happen this summer for a reported £25 million. Somebody's going to get a really, really good player. I think he's top of the Leicester squad for progressive passes. He scored the 3rd most goals in the side. I think he's got the 2nd most minutes. It's a vital cog to lose in the summer, and it's not going to be easy to replace. But they're going to have to do it. You've got to bite the bullet a little bit, and you have to get money for a player like Tielemans. At Liverpool, easy option would have been Joe Gomez, but I feel like I've spoken about him to death. I think it might be time for Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain to cut out. He's actually played more minutes than I thought this season. However, I just think he's so far down the pecking order in terms of Liverpool midfielders. Thiago, Fabinho, Henderson, Elliott, Curtis Jones, maybe even James Milner ahead of him. I think it's probably time for him to leave. His contract's up in 2023. This is the last opportunity for Liverpool to get a decent fee for him. And I do think there's still something there that other Premier League sides will look at and go, we could take him. He's still only 28. Yes, he's had injury problems in the past, but he would be an improvement on a lot of our midfield options. In the past we've seen Brighton take Adam Lallana from Liverpool, use him as a defensive midfielder to huge success. I don't think it's beyond the pale to say that Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain could add to another side's central midfield area. So I think get a fee if you're Liverpool, new starter for Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, and a new team is going to be picking up a very, very solid midfield operator. Despite his limited minutes, he's got more progressive carries than Firmino, not far off Naby Keita. I think it might well be time. At Manchester City, I've gone for Zinchenko. He's still only 25, Zinchenko. Still only 25. He's contracted until 2024. And obviously at the moment, he's got the awful problems going on in Ukraine. So there's more important things to think about than football. But in terms of his career, I think it's just stagnated one level this season and it might be time to leave. I think people forget how versatile Zinchenko is. Operated at left back, left wing back. He's operated in midfield. He operates in midfield for Ukraine, where he was, of course, made, I think, the youngest captain in the nation's history after that mistake against Germany. So he's pretty mentally strong as well. And he's only started 6 games this season. I think Alexander Zinchenko would offer an awful lot to some really elite sides in Europe that are in the hunt for a left back. At Manchester United then, I'm going to say it, it's Cristiano Ronaldo. 37 years old now, his contract's up next summer, and to be honest with you, number one, I don't think he's going to want to stay if Manchester United don't make the Champions League, and number two, I really want to see Erik ten Hag come in to a fresh, clean slate. There's lots of players leaving this summer, Pogba, Cavani, Mata, Lingard, and I'm sure they won't be alone, and I think it might be a good idea to remove Cristiano Ronaldo from the situation so that Ten Hag can start afresh. It's not that he's had a bad season this year, Cristiano Ronaldo, because he's pulled us out of so many holes, he's scored some huge goals, but I just do not think he suits the progressive nature in which Manchester United clearly want to move. I think it's probably time to say, do PSG want him? Does somebody else in European football want him? He's on a huge wage, so it's not going to be easy to get rid of him. But I think it's time to start fresh. I'm sorry, Ronaldo. I love you, but the experiment's failed. Moving on to Newcastle, I'm going for Jamal Lewis. Obviously, at one stage, he was left out of Eddie Howe's 25-man squad, wasn't he? Only 4 starts this season. What has gone on with Jamal Lewis, man? Newcastle fans, let me know in the comments below. I remember back in 2020 when Liverpool were having £10 million bids rejected by Norwich for Jamal Lewis. And he turns 24 in January. He must have had some injuries, like during his spell on Tyneside, but it's just not worked, does it? And it's not working now. It's time to cut out. I think Newcastle are definitely going to sign a left back in the summer. Matty Targett's obviously they're only there on loan, so if they can make that permanent, they might well be interested. But back in 1920 when he was playing for Norwich, he was really talented. He's putting up over 1.2 dribbles. He was putting up huge numbers of tackles and interceptions. What's happened? At Norwich, it's of course Max Aarons. I have to say that Norwich are going down and Max Aarons is too good to spend another season in the Championship. I don't think he's going to be able to get to one of the elite clubs that he's been previously linked to. But I think there are going to be plenty of Premier League sides that are interested in right-backs, aka Everton, who eventually do have to replace Seamus Coleman. And I think Max Aarons would be an absolutely fine option. They've worked with Everton in the past, and of course Ben Godfrey went there. So if I was Max Aarons, I'd be trying to stay in the Premier League, and I think Norwich are thinking to themselves, he's under contract till 2024, we have to get a fee for him, we have to let him go. At Southampton, I've gone for Moussa Djenepo. It's just not worked for him there. His contract's up in 2023, and I'm sure Southampton will be keen to get a fee for him because he is still only 23 years of age, but just not good enough on the ball. His output has been criminal at Southampton. It really has. I think he's attempting over 3 dribbles per game and failing with over 3 dribbles per game. His off-the-ball work rate, which is what Hasenhüttl loves in this sort of classic Red Bull style, is amazing. But no, I just don't see it. At Tottenham, then, I could have gone for some obvious ones. Ndombele and Lo Celso would have been really tap-ins. But I've actually gone for Harry Winks, who's 26 now, and his contract's up in 2024. With the arrival of Bentancur in there, he's just so far down the midfield pecking order, isn't he? And I think Tottenham fans will admit if they could get any sort of fee for him, they'd be pretty happy. And I do think there'd be Premier League clubs interested. Shoot the messenger. It was only 2 years ago that he was playing for England, of course. Now, I'm not saying that was right, but he's played 30 league games across the last 2 seasons. He's pretty neat and tidy on the ball, but there's not an awful lot else there for Conte to work with in terms of how he likes to play. If there's a team that are looking just to tick the ball over and retain possession, then Harry Winks is going to be a fine option for them. He's also only missed 3 Spurs games since August 2019 due to injury. Now, obviously, he hasn't started every single game in that time period or come off the bench in every single game in that time period, but he is a very reliable figure. Homegrown, still only 26. There's going to be clubs interested, man. At Watford, I've gone for Emmanuel Dennis. And I've gone for Emmanuel Dennis because I think his price will never be as high again as it is right now. He had an amazing purple patch, Emmanuel Dennis. He's outperformed expected goals by a mile. And I think people forget that he only scored 17 goals across 4 Belgian Pro League seasons. So I'm not sure that he will forever perform at this level. There is something to be said about selling players at the peak of their powers, especially if you're Watford and you can get fees for him, because he's only 24 and I'm pretty sure Premier League clubs will be saying to themselves, well, look at that goal scoring output at Watford. I'm sure we can replicate that, and they might be able to. So if I was Watford, I'd be taking the offers. At West Ham, it could have been Declan Rice, because his value is currently so astronomical that I think it's crazy. And if somebody offers £120 million for him, snap your hand off. But I've gone for Issa Diop, who I think is now the 4th choice centre-back at West Ham. It's only a few years ago that we were saying, elite sides. I think Chelsea were interested at about 30 million quid. But he's fallen way down the pecking order now. He's behind Craig Dawson, really, in terms of thoughts, isn't he? And I think it's only 24 Premier League starts since the beginning of last season. I remember the days where he was one of the first names on the team sheet. 30 Premier League starts a season for Issa Diop. I just don't really think it's worked this season for Issa. I just don't really think he's got a future at West Ham, I guess. So I would sell him this summer. But I'm sure he'd be a fine squad player if they can't. At Wolves, gone for Fabio Silva, another experiment that has just been a failure, really, given that he was the club's record signing for £35 million, at just 18 years old. Now, I don't want to disrespect Fabio Silva because there might well be a player in there, but I just don't think we're ever going to see it at Wolverhampton Wanderers. It's just 2 starts so far this season, isn't it? Last season, I think he played 19 games and didn't score a goal. Admittedly, the majority of those did come as substitute minutes, but he's also been at the club when their main striker, Raul Jimenez, had a huge injury, and he hasn't really been able to, grab the game by the scruff of the neck and say, I'm going to start as the number 9 in his absence. It just hasn't worked. I think he's lost possession more times across his Premier League career than he's had shots on target, which is a pretty damning stat given he's been here 2 seasons now. Alright, so that was my list of players who must be sold this upcoming summer. I'm sure I'm going to get some pelters from some people in the comments below, but it is what it is. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe. Let me know what you want to see next week. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you later. Bye.